Okay, so for this assignment, we're going to be doing picture replacement, and this is something that's just done, a number of times. And in this case, we're using one of the tools that you probably used heavily, which is this tracking. And there's many ways to do this, and I'm going to show a couple different ways. But essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to use a piece of footage. I don't think I need to restore that. Several pieces of footage. And actually that's the one I wanted, yes. Okay. So in this case, what I have here is a piece of source footage. And you can see that's what it looks like. If I just hit play, it's essentially this picture frame. And this is basically a reflection that we're seeing. Okay, so we're just seeing this reflection in the background. So what we want to do is put an actual picture here and make it look like there's an actual picture there. Okay, so this is a piece of footage I grabbed from Hollywood Green Screen, HollywoodCameraWork.us.co.org, whatever it was. So here's the original piece of footage, and you can see that it's kind of squished. It comes in at 1280 by 1080. You have to resize that. So I did a reformat node. Okay, there's a reformat node, 1280 by 720. I told it to distort. I went down and made a new one, 1280 by 720, gave it a name, and then I could pick it from there. And then I have, this is one way to do it is using a camera track node. Another way to do it is this way, which is a planar track. And then there's even further ways that I could do it, going into more detail, right? So I'm just going to go to a new Nuke file. Cool thing about Nuke too is that you can have multiple nukes open. So I have one here and I have another one there. So I can always reference back to this one if I get lost. Okay, so we're going to start this from scratch essentially. Like I said, I've already downloaded my stuff. Screen replacement, nope, not screen replacement, picture replacement, there it is. And the one we're going to use is the HCW picture frame. So you can just download that from their site. And I'm going to hit my S to go to my settings. I'm going to click on my project directory folder. Okay, and make sure you're hitting S down here, not up there. Okay, S up here does viewer settings, which is totally different than project settings. Okay, so hit the folder. I'm going to go to my desktop. D drive, Sean, W14, 2560. I'm just going to set my project there. Okay. And then I'm just going to read in a node. Oops, sorry, not read a node yet. Let's go to the full size format and go to new. And we'll set this to 1280 by 720. Full HD 720. Okay. So now we have our full size setting. Just close that. Hit the R for read. And let me just go find my footage. I put it inside the source one, because in case I lose it, I can always get it back. Picture frame, and just grab on this. You see it's 0 to 192. So if I hit 1, then I can preview it. I can see that the resolution's off here. Now changing it here is not going to do anything. I can change this to 1280 by 720. It doesn't change the fact that it's the wrong size. So I need to go in here and put in a reformat node. Okay, so now we have this and we have that. Now I have to be careful because if I disable that using D, you'll see that all the reformat node is doing right now is just kind of cropping it. That's why we have to go under here where it says resize type and change it to distort. And now it's actually going to squish it into the correct aspect ratio. Okay. So another hotkey you want to write down. If you hold the control key and you grab a bottom node, it'll grab everything above it as well. So it's kind of a neat thing to be able to do. Alright, so now it's reformatted. Hold control, drag it up, and you can see how it drags that up. Cool. Alright. So the next thing we can do is that we have to track this piece of footage. Okay. Now just to kind of show you, if I were to throw in a checkerboard, and we hit M for merge, and I connected the B to this. And we viewed that. Okay, the checkerboard's on top of it. So I can go to the checkerboard here and hit T for transform. Or simply, hit tab and then type transform. And then I could scale this down. Stick it roughly, I'm just throwing it there for right now. And then as I hit play, you'll see that obviously this doesn't move with it. Okay, and there's a bit of perspective that's on this picture frame as it's moving to make it look the way it's looking. Okay, so that's what tracking is going to give us. Is it's going to give us the ability to put something in that spot, all right, and have it move with the camera. So we're going to start off with a very, very basic tracker and work our way up to more of the complex trackers. Okay, so we're going to start off with adding a tracker node. Okay, so the tracker just fits in right there under reformat. And the way this works is that we have this box here where we can add tracks. So I can say add track. And it has this indicator. This center point is just the center of it. It gives something to line up to. This inner box here is what it's going to try to track. And the outer box is where it's going to look. Okay, so let's just bring this down to the corner. So I just drag the middle. And you'll see that I get a little picture here. It's kind of like a zoomed in image. All right. So I can just kind of make this bigger and say, hey, I want you to track all this information. And I want you to look inside this box for it. Okay. So just as an example of what the two boxes do, if you look at, let's say, this little loop shape right here, or actually the circle. Let's say I'm tracking this circle here. Okay. We don't want Nuke to look over here because there's a similar circle, so it might jump around, right? So I'm basically saying, here's what I want you to look for in this first box, this little pattern right here, and then I want you to check in only this area, all right? So every frame is going to go through, and it's going to say, okay, check this area, next frame, check this area, next frame, check that area. And as the camera moves, it'll move along with it, okay? So I've added a track, I've put it in position, I can align it here more if I need to, or I can zoom in and tweak it further. And then up here you'll see that I have some buttons. This is track backwards arrange, so if I only want to track so many frames, I could track so many frames. If I wanted to track to the start, I could track to the start. If I wanted to track previous frame only, if I wanted to stop the tracking, and then obviously the forward ones, okay? So I'm just going to hit this forward one. I'm actually at 122. Doesn't really matter where I start. I just have to make sure that I do 122 forward and then go 122 back. Okay, so I'm just hit the track button and we'll watch it chug along. Oops. There it goes. Okay, so time to go 50 seconds. This is actually taking a lot longer than it typically does. And I'm watching here to see where that little crosshair is, because that's giving me an indicator as to if it's a good track or not. Sometimes what happens is it actually bounces off and you lose the track, which I'm sure we'll see. So now that tracked, I can click and drag in the blue area, and I can see is that little crosshair in the center staying where I wanted it to. Okay, and it looks like it is. It looks like it's doing a good job. So let's go back to 122 and go track the other way. Sometimes it helps to go in the center and track two different ways, then try to start at the beginning and track forward, and then let it go through the whole thing. You can see that it's come off slightly here. I'm not even too concerned about that. As long as it's not jumping, I can deal with it. Okay, and if it does go too far off, I can hit cancel. I can reposition the point and say go track again. And sometimes it's a matter of just kind of repositioning some of the boxes, or repositioning how big the boxes are or the size of the box that we need to worry about. And that'll kind of help it get that shape. Okay, now we're quite a bit off the corner, but again, it's not jumping, so it may work. All right. All right, so there it is. All right, so now if we watch this one, I can make this bigger if I need to, just so you can see it better. But as I click and drag, you can see how we're off the corner here. It's not right on the corner. And as I drag forward, it gets closer to that corner. Okay. And actually, I don't like that it went up there. It actually did do a little bit of upward movement. and then downward movement. So I'm not too thrilled about that. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to reposition this. So I'm at frame, oops. I'm going to go back to frame 0. I'm going to reposition this. And then I'm just going to say track arrange forward and go from 0 to 122. And sometimes you just have to do this where you kind of go and reposition it, track some more, reposition it, track some more. Your goal is to make Nuke do the most work. Okay, even though it might seem like you're doing a lot of work, Nuke's doing a lot of the work. Okay, it looks like we're scooting off our original point. So I'm just going to hit cancel. And then we can take it back a little bit and see. Yes, I've definitely scooted too far off my point. Okay, so this is just indicating that, you know, maybe I'm having difficulty tracking this specific thing. If we have a lot of shape changes, like I said, it's looking for this shape inside this box. But as I get here, you can see that coloring is different. Okay, up here in the corner, I don't think I can. These are my frames. These are my reference frames, what they're called. And if you look, there's like a dark shadow here. And in this reference frame, there is no dark shadow there. It's dark, but it's just not the same kind of thing. Okay, so that's what it's looking for. So it may, you know, do me some good if I were to kind of squish this maybe, or, you know, kind of isolate more of this bottom corner area some more. All right, and then again, I'll try tracking backwards. And we're looking at that top corner. We're looking at this here to see, you know, what it's doing. So I'm just going to let it chug, and then we'll be back. All right, so our track is done, and we can hit the play button and just see how it looks. You can see it's a little bit off the corner here, and then it scoots in there as we get further along. Okay. All right, so for now, we're just going to say that that one's good. Okay, so track number 1, we're good. So I'm just going to uncheck that, and I'm going to add a new track, track number 2. And track number 2 is going to go into this corner. Okay, and this is what we're doing, is just tracking the corners. And you see this time I'm at frame 8. You know, it's good habit to be at the same frame when you do this. But sometimes it just doesn't, you know, work out like that, so you got to be kind of flexible. All right, so here I'm trying to get, you know, the frame inside my what I want to track area, and then where I want to track, I can kind of make that a little bit bigger. Okay, now the bigger this is, the longer it's going to take, because it's trying to look in that entire area for that piece. So if you have a fast moving piece, you have to have this bigger. If you don't have a fast moving piece, it's kind of slow, then we can kind of narrow it down. All right, so and it's also looking for contrast in here too. So just to see, if I hit R, G, or B, if one of these channels has better contrast than the other one, like the G, let me just hide this. The G, you can see in this area here, it's a bit contrasty from this point to that point. If I hit R, it's kind of flat. You know, this value, and that value are pretty much the same except for these lines. And then B, it's a little bit darker, you know. So some pictures are just going to have a better contrast than others. Like if you're doing a green screen shot, when we do the laptop tracking, you'll see that too. All right, so we're on track 2 now. That's the one we're dealing with. There's our starting point. So let's say track back. That should be only a quick one. There we go. And then we can also go to one of these buttons somewhere up here. Is like go to the last tracked frame. Key tracker. I don't know. I can't find it. Whatever. We were at 8. Okay, and you can tell too by the blue down here. And then let's say track forward. And then we'll just keep an eye in this corner and just see. And because it's turning, we are going to get, you know, some issues with it because it's turning. The pattern is constantly changing. Okay, so the image it's going to look for at the end is not the same image it's going to look for at the beginning, because now we're introducing this darker line here. Okay, you can see how we kind of swayed away from the thing there. Alright, we're pretty much tight in that corner still. Okay, our goal is to get a nice smooth motion that mimics what the camera's doing, or mimics what that corner is doing. Okay, and if we had a bunch of jerkiness, this thing is just like bouncing, 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 then that's no good. We got to fix that. Okay, and the real test is when we put our piece of footage on there. You can tell right here, there's definitely a switch. Okay, so I could do this too, just to show you. If I go to 106, I can say this one here, see the X, clear backwards. So I can clear everything to this side of it. Okay, or I can go to 113 and clear everything forward or whatever. Okay, so I can clear it and then adjust my stuff there. All right, so I'm going to leave track 2. We'll just turn that on or turn that off. I'm going to go up here where I'm going to put track 3. And I'll go, kind of looking around somewhere like that, where it's just kind of like a gray, beige color in the gray. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to add a track here, put it into the corner. I can also go to my settings. There are some settings here, and where I showed, we can track the red, the green, or just the blue channel so that it'll help. I could also adjust for luminance changes. I could play with some of these settings here. Sometimes it really helps to play with these just to get better solves. Another thing I like to turn on, let's see where they've moved it to. Is grab a pattern grab behavior. So I'm going to say grab a new pattern every 5 frames. Okay? So every 5 frames I want you to grab a new pattern. And what that's going to do is that if the pattern changes, which it is, it's going to grab a new frame and it's going to use that as my tracking. Okay? So again, we're going to make this bigger. Oops. I'm going to make the inner one just big enough so it fits that. Make that a little bit bigger, and then track backwards. Okay. And then again, I'm not watching this. I'm watching this little screen here. That's my preview screen. And some applications don't have this little preview screen. Nuke didn't until a few versions ago. There we go. So we could also compare. You see there's the start, there's the end. Again, we're kind of swaying away from it, but it looks like it's pretty smooth. Alright, so there's that. So now let's forward. And there we're really off. It like jumped all of a sudden. You see now I'm like way up here. Okay, so here I'm just going to go to 106. I'm going to say clear the forward. And I'm going to go back to, let's say, 192. And I can just move it in my little preview area to where I want it to be. Say track back a range. And I forget what frame that was, but let's say from 192 to 110. Okay, it'll overwrite frames. So if I did go like too far, it'll actually just overwrite it. I'll probably have to go a little bit further. And if you are using an earlier version of Nuke, sometimes this cancel button won't work either. You just have to wait for it to finish. Alright, we've swayed away again. Okay, sometimes there's just a sticky part in the video where it just kind of moves away. So 131 seems to be a good frame. So let's see, one of these buttons. We can't really clear that. Alright, so I'm just going to have to move it. So I'm just going to go, let's say 131 is where we're good. So I'm going to go to 121, put it in position. And then say track forward to 131. And it's still moving away. Alright, now you can see it definitely moved a lot there. It's like crazy how far it moved. Let's go back to 121. And let's try adjusting the size of this. Sometimes, like I said, that'll help too. Alright, let's do our track forward to 131. You see there's a definite like jump there. So I'm going to go to 131. And I'm going to say let's track backwards until 100. Oops. Go back to 131. I typed something wrong there. Track backwards to 100. There we go. And the issue is that that light pops in, and that's why it's kind of getting confused. Okay, that looks like it's a better track. Still... a little jump right there. And even if I zoom in, you'll see it's making keyframes. So if I look where my keyframes are, I can see that it's still a little bit off. So maybe I want to go to 132 and track backwards to 100. And you can see it's rewriting out the keyframes. We're adjusting this. And we have another little jump right here. Okay, we can adjust these things after too, so I'm just going to leave it for now, and you'll see how we can play with that. All right. So now, how did this thing get so small? Whatever. All right, so let's add another track. This time it's going to be in the top left corner. Alright, so we're at track 4. We're at frame 100. Let's go and track backwards. And we'll see where this goes. Alright, so we're definitely getting way off track here. You can see it's like way far down. So I'm going to go back to frame 100. There we go. I can use this one here, that jump keyframe button right there. And I'm just going to make this a bit bigger, make this a bit bigger. And I'm just getting more data in here, and that's going to help kind of tighten up what we're tracking. Okay, so now we'll track backwards again, and just let it go, and see what happens. Okay, it's usually when something, you see that this image here popped in, that's when we lost it. Okay, so again, I'm just going to go back to frame 100. I'm going to go, maybe I can set my RG and B. No, still getting about the same in each one. Let's see where that glass passes through. See, that's where it's losing it because it gets confused. It's trying to follow this thing here. Alright, so let's go into our settings. Oops. And make sure these are unchecked, because otherwise it'll start tracking those as well. Let's go to track 4. Let's go to, say, maximum iterations. Let's turn this up to 300. And we'll adjust for luminance changes. We'll just see what happens there. Okay. It's already doing that. Step to markers. Alright. So this one's going, let's see, we'll go back to 100. We'll track backwards. See if that gives us any better results. The other thing we can do is shrinking the size of this box and see if that gives us better results. Already you can see that the light came in and it's not following the light this time. It kind of is going a little bit further down than I wanted to. But it's definitely not like a jerky motion. I can adjust that. I can set keyframes on this after, because you can see it's basically like starting here and ending there. So I can add some keyframes in. Okay, just to get it to be the size or the position I want. So I'm going to go to 100, track forward. And this is, like I said, this is just a regular tracker. It's pixel tracking is what it's called. It's basically finding a pattern of pixels. Let's say we're looking for red, green, yellow, blue, and it's trying to find that red, green, yellow, blue pattern on every frame. Yeah, going forward to 100, it looks like it's pretty good. All right, I don't know why these keep getting popped down. Alright. Alright, so now we should be good. So I'm just going to turn all 4 of these on. Oops, actually I don't need all 4 of these on. Turn them all off. Okay, the E here means that it's like, hey, go and track this. Okay, it's nothing to do with our next steps that we're going to be using. All right, so now that we have all of these tracked, even though they're not perfect tracks right now, we can adjust them later, like I said. We have the tracks. Then what we can do is output their information. Okay, so what I can do is I'm going to just click on the translates here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'll click on the rotates 2. And if I make this a little bit bigger, you can see there's also a scale format as well. Okay, so I can take this, and then once I have my tracking information, I output what I want. Okay, so let's say I wanted to like lock this camera where it was. I wanted to basically, let me close this. You can see how the camera is moving. Let's pretend that I want the picture frame to stay exactly where it is and get rid of the camera move. I can change this to a stabilize and then hit create. Okay, so once I hit create, it pops this little tab off. So whatever I hook into this is going to stabilize. So I want to stabilize this piece of footage. So now I view it. And now when I hit play, rewind it and hit play, you'll see that the picture frame, my 4 tracks, are basically staying where they're at. And the frame is adjusting. Okay, so if I were just to move this just over here to the edge, just so you can use this as a guide, you see how this is not moving at all. Okay, our video is still updating. Everything's kind of, nudging around. Okay, so now if I were to just throw in, I should have just kept it, my checkerboard in here, drop a merge in. I need a transform on that, preview the merge. There we go. Okay, the cool thing on Nuke 2, you can just look at my node graph. What did he do? What did he connect where? Checkerboard's going into transform into the A of the merge. This transform stabilize going to the B of the merge, and then the little dotted lines going to the viewer. That's what I'm viewing. Okay, so I'm not going to line this up perfectly. I just want you to see how I can kind of get this positioned. Okay, and maybe a little rotate, whatever. All right, good enough. All right, so it's there, and now when I hit play, you'll see that it's like saying locked on to the photograph. Now the photo is turning, so it's not like matching the turning of it. Okay. So for some things, this stabilize is going to be crazy helpful. So for this, we're not really using it. I just wanted to show it. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my tracker. I'm going to go down to my transform, and I'm going to change this to a corner pin 2D using current frame. Okay, and then I'm going to hit create. Oops. I need to make sure all 4 of these are enabled. And then hit create. They don't need to be enabled. I was right about that part. Just have to shift select them. Then hit create. There we go. Alright, so now this creates a corner pin node. So I'm going to delete my transform here. And this corner pin is going to allow me to just connect my checkerboard to a corner pin. So here's my checkerboard, just a regular checkerboard. I hook up my corner pin, view it, and right now it's not going to work. I'll have to fix it in a second. Then I'm going to connect that to the merge and hit this here. Okay, now on a corner pin, what's happening is, I'll show you what a regular corner pin node does. I'll close some of these windows. A regular corner pin allows me to grab these points and just kind of manipulate them. Okay, so I can essentially get this to look like our picture frame, and there it'll be. All right. So what this one, the reason this one's not working is because all the points are matched up perfectly. That works out great. But in the from area, it has the same points. Okay, so it essentially hasn't offsetted at all, and the from is kind of like an offset. So I'm going to go to the maps or the keys here and just say no animation. Yes. Click here, no animation. Yes. Click here, no animation. Yes. Click here, no animation. Yes. And I'm going to say set to input. Okay, and this copies the 0, 0, 1280, 0, 1280, 720, 0, 720. So this is essentially saying this is where the original point is, and this is where you want to move that point to. So now, just by doing that, you see that the checkerboard has been positioned inside here. And you can see it is a little bit off here. That's where we can use those froms and adjust our offset. Okay, so then we can rewind this and hit play, and what you're going to see is that now the checkerboard is moving with the picture frame. Okay, pretty snazzy, right? There's still some work that needs to be done. Obviously, the baby here should not be like that because it should be cut out. Right now we're overlapping it. And then also, if you look at this corner here, I'm just going to go to where it does it. It's around here. There you go. You can see it right there where it popped down. Okay, so stuff like this, we can just set some keyframes to kind of cover up some of that. So if we go to the corner pin, and we go to, let's see, this is, just so you can see it, this is corner 1 in the bottom left, corner 2 bottom right, corner 3 top right, corner 4 top left. Okay, so I'm going to go to this corner here, and I'm going to go to corner 3. I'm going to right click and set a key. Then I'm going to use my arrow keys to go to frame 100, and then I can just move this up. Now I can click in here and just use my arrow keys as well, just to nudge these values, which is a nice little feature. There we go. And now we should be locked in for the rest of it. Now at the end, I believe it was getting a bit high, so at the end, I'll just pull this back down. Okay, and then if I see between that it's doing this, let me just erase this. Okay, so that works pretty good. Okay, so then we can just go to the next corner and just kind of investigate that one. You want to do this on a per corner basis. Okay, so obviously I could adjust that one as well. And I want to go to a frame where I know it's good. So like there, I know it's good. So I'm just going to go to frame or from 4 and set a key and go all the way back to the beginning. And then just tidy that up. And then preview it. Now if I get here and I'm like, okay, well I'm starting to see some stuff, I can adjust it. You just don't want it to go through and adjust every single frame, because then you're kind of losing the point of it. Okay, and some of it might be like this bottom left one, number 1 is doing that. So I'm going to go until I see that the bottom left is good. Right there, the bottom left is good. Right at 108. So I'm going to set a key here. Okay, and I think that's where it's moved away, so I'm just going to nudge that back in position. And it looks like we got a little high, so alright, and then we can go around the entire thing and just keep doing this. Alright, this tracker here is actually an outdated tracker, but sometimes you can need it, sometimes you can get away with using it. Sometimes just like, you know, simple jobs, you can just kind of pop it in there. Alright, so let's pretend that these corners are mint perfect. I need to then cut out the word baby, okay, so I can see that. So I'm going to go to my merge and just kind of mix this down just so I can see where the lettering is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my checkerboard here and hit O. O is for roto, okay? And then what this is going to allow me to do is just cut this out. So I'm just using this to draw a shape around the B, like that. And I'm going to say inside here I want to pre-multiply it by the RGB. Yep, just making sure. And then I'm going to invert this. So where this little checkbox here is inverted, there we go. So I'm inverting it. No, it was RGBA. That's right. Okay, so I'm pre-multiplying it by the RGBA that applies the alpha. That's the same thing as me going to here and saying pre-mult and applying it this way, not inverted. That should be the same thing. It's odd. All right. So there we go. So now that part's cut out. I need to re-put these parts in. You see how it still has these little openings here, and I'm at frame 31 just as a reference. So I'm just going to click, and drag. I can hold down Alt. Oops, sorry, Control. Wrong program. And create that shape. Do the same thing here. Another shape. And then click that, Control, drag that down. Okay. So now you see how that's cut out there perfectly. I'm going to make sure that auto key is on, which is this button right here. That's going to allow me to set more keyframes. And then I'm going to go up to, let's say, frame 100. And I hit O to turn my overlay off. And I can see, you know, where this thing is not lining up anymore. So if I go back to, let's say, 0. Okay, it looks like it's still good there. If I disable my roto or re-enable it, I can kind of, you know, get a reference frame. It could probably be, if I hit O, I could probably nudge it in slightly, just to get rid of some of that black. Okay, so then I can go up to, let's say, 91. And I'm just pulling this down because that's just the shape of it has changed. So I just need to readjust this. And sometimes I'm pulling it like away from it, and then pushing it back to where it needs to be. Alright, so there's that. Hit O. And still see a little bit poking through. And then pull this down. Alright, that's good. Okay, now I haven't done the other part of this B yet. But essentially what I want to do is kind of go through and see, you know, where is this coming off that I need to adjust. I think the big B is probably good. Okay, so let me go back and do the little b. So I was at 51, I believe. Or 31. Doesn't matter which frame I do it at. I just like to kind of stay consistent and do them at the same frames. So I'm going to add another shape here. Okay, now notice that this one did not cut out. I have to go in here and tell it, I can't invert it. You see that inverting is not working. So I have to go into this mode and do a minus. Okay, I had to play with it for a minute. So I went to my roto and I got rid of that pre-bolt. I went to my Bezier 1 and I uninverted it, okay? And then I added the pre-mult here. Okay, so Roto 1, these are just the defaults right now. And then I added a pre-mult after it to apply the alpha. Without the pre-mult, we get that. And then I added these. If you go to this mode here, what I'm doing is I'm saying I want to subtract this portion. So I basically outlined what I want to subtract. I outlined number 4, said subtract. And then I went to 2 and 3, and I changed those to plus. So I'm adding that information back in. Okay. So the same thing, I'm going to go and make a new one for the inside of this. And I can go below it because that's fine. I don't need to get it right against that line. There we go. And then make sure this is set to plus. That way it adds it in there. Then I go up a bit. And then just make sure, oops, these points are in the exact spot that I need them to be in, so that my picture doesn't look like it's like changing perspective as to, you know, where these pieces are hitting. Where are you at? There it is. And like I said, pull it away, take a look at it. I think I do want to pull this down a bit more. But and I'm always kind of looking at, you know, where my keyframes are down here, just to make sure I'm putting it at the keyframe. Because if I go to 155, let's say, and push this way up here, you see I'm not overriding it, I'm just creating this like weird thing. And I can always come over here and say subtract keyframe, now it's gone. Or I can jump to the next keyframe and see if it's still good. Alright, so that should be good there. I'll hit L, that's my hotkey. You can see for the most part that my corners aren't sticking perfectly. We're going to fix that. I'm not going to use this as an actual tracker. Okay, but the B and the B are cut out of this, which is what we wanted. Now I could also take this. I use a checkerboard just as a placeholder. I can read in a piece of footage. Oops. And again, it has to be a piece of footage. It can't be a QuickTime movie. All right. So here is, I'm going to show the next one that we're going to be doing after this assignment, which is this little green screen piece. And I'm going to reformat it because, again, it's not the correct format. 1280, distort. And I'm going to save because I think it's going to freak out in a second. Work. Tracking picture frame. All right. And that's what it should be showing. Reformat it. Roto it. Yep, it's about to freak out. So I'm going to rewind it. You can see there's a guy in here. That guy shouldn't be there. Or maybe he should. This is one thing to keep in mind here. If you look at this piece of footage, if I go to 1 and I hit A for alpha, you see that this one has an alpha. I look at this one, hit A, there is no alpha. Okay? So because this one already had a piece of, or had an alpha channel on here, as I did my roto and I did all this other stuff, it was basically subtracting and adding things to it. Because this one doesn't have the alpha, doesn't have the white there, it's getting confused. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here, I'm going to hit the tab key, and do a shuffle. And what I'm going to do is say shuffle white into the alpha. This is very confusing, so if you just click this white on the bottom here, that's the alpha channel. See where it says alpha? So now it has an alpha. So now if I come down to here, there it is, now it works. All right. So now that picture is inside the picture frame, and I hit play. And you can see how the guy is, the guy looks like he's on the picture frame. All right. And then we can play with, obviously, it looks more like a video screen than a picture frame. We can play with this merge to get it to look a little bit more blended. Right about here, there should be like a thing going across that light. Oops, maybe it's a little bit further. There it is at 22. Okay. So here we should see kind of like the light reflecting in here. It's not. So if I pull this merge down, or this mix down, you can see how now we can see that light coming in. And now it looks like, if I rewind it and play it, it looks like that's like the reflection inside that glass. So it looks like it's actually a piece of glass that's on there. Okay. Now I can also come over here, let's go back to this, and I can change this to a plus and pull the mix back up. And now I can see this a bit more clear as well. All right, so it's going to be a mixing game of, getting this stuff to look correct. And just like before, we can come back up to our read node. There's our shuffle. We'll just leave that there. And I can add a grade node, just one. A grade node in, and I can adjust my coloration here. Play with my offset some. Let me pull my mix up. Okay, and get these values to kind of tie in a little bit better with my picture frame. All right. Now another thing I can do, just to kind of help seal the deal on it, just delete that checkerboard, is I could take and add a vignette to this picture. And what that would do is give me a little bit of shadow around the edges. In this case, I really don't think I need it. Just because of that reflection that's coming through. I think the reflection kind of really helps seal this as being part of that image anyway. But I could do that. Okay. When we get to the laptop part, we will do that. But now let's track this thing the correct way. Okay. This is what's cool too about Nuke, is that like this stuff is set up. I can just leave that alone and not worry about it, except for this corner pin, which we'll eventually get rid of. Okay, so let's go and just set this tracker aside. And actually, I'll just leave this as is and just copy these nodes over. Okay, so I just hit Control-C, Control-V, and I have a new piece of footage. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to add another tracker. So there's another one called a planar tracker, which can do a good job. I know on this piece of footage it doesn't do a good job. So let me just show it to you so you can see it. So I'm going to add a roto in here. Okay, now let me view it. Now the way that the planar tracker works different than a pixel tracker is it tries to basically find a shape and track that entire shape. So if I just click on like this point here, all right, so the way it works is we have a roto, then we just take our shape and we just draw a shape around here. And what it's going to do is it's going to try to track the shape of this thing. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you just want to get it, nice. There we go. Okay, so now that I have a shape around it, I can right click and say planar track. So I right click right in the Bezier. And then now that I have this, you'll notice that we got our tracking tools up here. So I'm going to click on the Bezier and then say track forward. And what it's going to do, like I said, is try to track that shape. So I'm just going to watch it and see what happens. Alright, so now we're almost done. And there we go. Okay. So now it tracked in. It looks like it did a pretty good job. It's a little bit off right there. It's pretty good in that corner. A little bit off here. A little bit off there. Alright, so I'm going to rewind it. So we go back to frame 0. And then over here we have a couple things. This is to display the planar surface. Okay, now this is the plane that's going to be manipulated. So I'm just going to, oops, I have to turn this on. I'm going to turn on the next one, which is to correct the plane. Okay, so I'm just going to bring these corners in. Now I've tracked the outside, but I can bring these corners in to match up anything that's in that same plane. So the corners of my picture frame, I can just slide these right into place. Oops, gotta grab right in the corner. Grab right into the corner. There we go. Right into the corner. There we go. And right into the corner. There we go. Okay. So now, as I play, you'll see that this thing is following that shape. Okay, now there might be a little wiggling here. A lot of it you have to wait till the RAM loads, and then it'll play back nice and smooth. So I'm just going to let it go. And there it is. And it looks like overall it's pretty good. We might have some stuff we can clean up, but let's just take a look and see. Again, everything's kind of connected, so if I were to go back, like even on this guy, if I went back here and I retrack number 1, it would update everything over in this corner pane and make sure that that worked. Okay, so the same thing's going to apply with this planar track, is that if I update any of this stuff, it'll automatically trickle down and correct any of that stuff. Alright, so now that we have this, I can go here and say, do I want a tracker? If I go to tracker, it'll actually output a tracker just like this tracker that's over here, right there. But I don't want to do that. I do a corner pin, and I typically do a corner pin absolute. And that usually works pretty good. These ones that are down here, here's a corner pin stabilize, so it's going to stabilize this video, just like the other one did. We have these other ones that are called baked at the end. Okay, now watch when I click on this regular absolute create. You can see we have a green line going to it. Now if I click on this and I go to absolute baked and hit create, okay, it's connecting it to it with this line. I can just disconnect that. But there's no green line connecting these. Okay, so this one is done with all keyframes. So typically what could happen is in the field, you may have to be someone who tracks a shot and then passes off the information to someone else. Okay, so we don't want them to do any of this stuff. So we would just delete all that and hand them off, you know, this one node that controls all the movement of that picture frame. But if I change anything here, it's not going to change anything there. All right, or if I were to delete this, it'll say, are you sure you're going to do this because these two things are connected? I would say no. All right, but if I delete that baked one, nothing's going to happen. Okay, so just keep that in mind. All right, so now let's go to oops, this stuff here. So here's that piece of footage that we had before. I'm just going to copy it and paste it and drop it in here. So now we have basically the same setup. We have our footage reformatted. Here's all the tracking information that we did. And then that's going into a corner pin. Okay, just like it is here, tracker into the corner pin. And then we're going to merge. Here's my A. Here's my B. So there's my footage. You'll see that my that it lines up perfectly because it's already in the exact spot that we need it to be. With this corner pin, you'll see that the from node has already been adjusted. That's one of the nice things about the new one, which is planar tracking, that does that kind of stuff. And then when I hit play, everything's going to move just like it was before on the other one. Okay, so some pieces of footage you need to use this kind of tracker. Some pieces of footage you can use the planar tracker. All right, so that's as far as I'm going to go with this assignment as far as the tracking goes. The rest of this we're going to just do some more adjustments, and I'm going to get rid of this piece of footage. I just want to have an image inside here. So let's go and grab something real quick. All right, so I grabbed a picture, so I'm just going to load it. And we'll just connect this in. And there we go. All right, you see, so like the baby here is all cut out. Everything matches good. You know, if I see like a little bit of this beige poking through, I can just jump to the roto. I gotta make sure I grab the right one. This is my tracking roto. This is my regular roto. I want to go to a nearby keyframe. See if it's off on the keyframe, which it is. 157 is a little bit off. So just nudge these over. You always want to adjust your keyframes first, and then come back and tweak anything like adding new keyframes afterwards. There we go. Okay, so now I can go back. You can see it mostly took care of the problem there. I could also add a little bit of a feather here. Maybe like 5 pixel feather. So that way it's a little bit softer. Okay, so that works there. And obviously follow that one. Alright, now you see it looks like the edges of this are just a little bit too harsh. So I'm going to go through and drop a constant on here. And I'm just going to merge my constant with this one. And I'm going to take the constant, I merged it in, and I'm just going to add a roto to this. So I just hit O for roto. And it's hard to do it here, so I'm just going to click on the constant's roto here and hit 1. Oops, there we go. And let me close all these, reopen the roto, and then I have that. So I'm just going to click that. Alright, just a standard vignette, everything we've already done before. Now this time I'm using black instead of the image, just because I think I just want to have, like, basically it's like a shadow. It's not necessarily the image itself doing the vignetting. It's more of a shadow on the image. Alright, so now we've pulled the shadow parts out, or the soft parts out. Let's view the feather. And you'll see that it doesn't match perfectly. This image of Justin was 1920 by 1200, and the constant itself was 1280 by 720. So putting them together, we get this funky shape. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add in a crop node. And the crop node, I'm going to say to reformat 1280 by 720. And that way I can just move the crop node. Let me close some of these other windows down. There we go. So I'm just moving the crop node just to kind of get him in position. There we go. So something like that. Okay. So this is basically cropping it and repositioning it inside there. I could have done a reformat node. Let me just disable that so you can see what the reformat's going to do. And let me just preview that. And same thing, 1280 by 720. And if I do a width, it seems to work pretty good. But if I did a distort, you can see just ever so slightly, he just kind of gets a little shrunk. Okay, so that's why I'm not using the reformat, because I don't want it to do that. In some images, it's going to be a lot more drastic. So the crop node works good, so I'm just using the crop node. If he was a little bit too close, I could always go to transform and just shrink him down and just scoot this over manually. And sometimes that's easier to manipulate than the crop node itself. Okay, so don't be afraid to kind of play with these tools as you're doing them, just to see, you know, what would happen if I did do this node instead of that node. There we go. Okay. So now we merge it. Okay, black in the middle. We need to flip it, so I'm going to go to my roto. I'm going to invert it. Okay, so now we have, if I disable and re-enable, you can see the vignette. There we go. And we'll come down here to the merge and hit 1. There he is inside there. My grade is my old grade. I'm just going to delete that and add a new grade in. And I think I'm just going to maybe lift it up a little bit just to kind of get, there's no like real black in this image. It's all pretty grayish, so I'm just lightening it. There's no like real whites either, so I'm just playing with this just to kind of get something that looks more like a picture inside of a picture frame. Okay, and again, I'm seeing a little bit more of this color popping up, so I can always go back to that roto, check what keyframe I'm on. Yep, it's definitely that. And this is just a result of me kind of doing it really quickly and not really taking my time, which I should do. Okay, I'm just using O as my hotkey for manipulating or viewing the overlay. There we go. Okay, so obviously you take your time setting that up. So that's pretty good there. I also want to add, this picture is basically, it's too clean. If I just hit L, you can see the background here, and I'm going to crank this up so you can see it better, not that one. This one here, you can see there's a lot of noise in this background, where here there's no noise because it's a still image. This is a video, this is a still, even though it's moving. So I'm going to go and reset this. And I'm going to go to my Justin picture way up here, let's say after the grade. you know, you kind of pick where you want to add things in. And I don't know if I need that. I don't need this reformat. That was just from the other one. And I'm going to add in I can't think. It's not noise, grain. There we go. I'm going to add in grain. Okay, and what this is going to do is it's going to add a grain structure to this. Okay, now I typically want to match what this is. So I can basically take down, I think the intensity of these is a little bit too much. There we go. So I took down the intensity some. So now we do have some grain here. If I hit L, you'll see it kind of shimmering, which is what we want. Alright, that looks good. Okay. We can also adjust if there is any kind of fuzz, like this looks a little bit soft, he looks a little bit too crisp. I can add a defocus on here. And I'm just going to defocus it slightly, so it's at 1.6 in this case. So clear, softer. Okay, just softens the image some. I also want to soften this alpha channel going around the edge. So I can scoot that up some. I can add a, say a blur, and just say to blur the alpha, and just so you can see what it's going to do. Oops. Let's go before the pre-mult and add the, I'm going to add the erode. I'm just doing that. Okay, well I could soften that too. Can help blend that in a little bit more. Okay, so that's pretty good there. Alright. What else? The coloring looks pretty good. We're still not getting the... or are we getting it? No, we're not getting the reflection in there. So let's go through our merge and just kind of pull this back a little bit. Or again, we could change this just to a plus, and that will add some of that to it. Okay, so now we rewind, we hit play, and we're seeing the picture in here with the reflection in the background. Oops, I pulled that back up. There we go. And then we can go back and adjust the coloring if we need to. But I think we get our point across as to, you know, this is a picture inside our frame. A little hint too is if we hit Tab and F, or space and F, we get it full screen, and then we can preview this. So I just typically, I'll hit the play button, let it go through, come back to my station once it's done, and take a look at it. Okay, and I want to check the corners, because the corners are going to be what are going to give it away. So I'll let it go through here, and then we'll check it. Alright, so this is done doing its thing. And if you watch the corners look like they're pretty stable. I kind of watch this little white highlight, and I make sure that the white highlight stays the same size the whole time. Same thing here. You know, you kind of look at the spacing, not just the corner itself, but the spacing around it, and make sure that's staying the same thing. Okay, so this looks pretty good. It might be a little bit too glossy. I may want to just take some of the settings down. Like if I go back to his grade up here, way up here, and you see how if I disable it, it's kind of bringing more of him back. Okay, so I can always go into this and maybe pull some of that multiplying up a little bit, and pull some of his gain down a little bit, and just basically I'm adjusting the image. Okay, now there's no correct settings for this. It's just kind of like eyeballing it. All right, and then I can also come down to my merge, and I can play with another operation too. We did plus. Over obviously just overwrites it. It's not what it means, but that's what it's doing. We could try screen. We can do overlay. No, overlay. We can do several of these and then play with them. We can do that one if we wanted to do that. Okay. So there's lots of different things we can kind of play with. Even over kind of works, and then just kind of pulling this down. that works as well too. Okay, so you want to find the kind of the best one that's going to match your picture and do what you need your image to do. If I had a picture of a cat on a green background, it might be different settings for the merge, different settings for my defocus, different settings for my grain, different settings for my grade. Okay, so we have to just understand that kind of stuff. All right, so here we have this over here is the standard pixel tracker, so I'm just going to marquee these, drop a backdrop on this, and then this over here is our other backdrop, and backdrop here, this is pixel tracker, and then this guy here is our planar tracker. One of the biggest things you're going to learn in this class, or one of the biggest things you want to learn, is the ability to do tracking, because it is highly critical you do tracking for rotoscoping, for lots and lots and lots of things. All right, so now that we're done, we just add our right node at the end. There we go. And we tell it where we want it to go. So I'm going to send this to my desktop. Tracking, new folder, right out from Nuke, picture, frame dot pound 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 dot TIF or PNG. Either one will be acceptable. We hit render 0 through 192. That's my frame range. I hit OK. Now it's going to send it out. I'll bring this into After Effects, and then I can adjust it from there. Okay. Another thing I could do too, just as I'm kind of thinking of this now, is I could also put, just copy this, right? Because that's a vignette right there. That's our vignette. So I can just copy this and then paste it down here. And now we have a vignette on here. And if I say, well, I don't really want this constant, I want the image, well, just drag the image over. And then change this to a multiply. And then we can tweak the multiply settings. There we go. And maybe even play with where this is located. I'm just going to pull it further out, because I think I'm losing a little bit too much of the inner scene here. But we can reuse, once we've made one roto, we can always keep that file and just reuse it over and over again. It's really odd that it's doing it right in the center. Oh, so I have this white card right in the middle. I'm going to go through and shuffle here. Okay, so I'm shuffling this. I'm going to shuffle black into the alpha channel. And what that does is it gets rid of any alpha that might have been there. Okay, so it's a good way to clear out your alpha. So now when I look at this, you see that? Let me pop it back on here. And this multiply might be doing no good either, so let's just put it back to over. Yeah, I think I wanted an over anyway, so let's just delete this pre-mult. Oops, just the pre-mult. And you see the difference in that shuffle being on or off. Okay, and I could actually pick, which way do I like it better. With it off seems to not brighten it up so much. So I think I'm going to leave it like that. Alright, cool. So I can go back to my right, and I can just hit render again. I don't have to set anything else up. It's just already set up. It's already like ready to go. I just basically hitting the render button all over again. So then again, I'll wait for it to go, take it in After Effects, render it out, and we're good to go. So that's this tracking. I'm going to cancel for now. Next time we'll get into some more tracking things. We'll cover the camera tracker, which is under 3D, I believe. Somewhere in there it's camera tracker, or right there. Okay, and this one is even more powerful than the planar tracker. And you can use it for lots and lots of things. Okay, so that is planar tracking and pixel tracking.